Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa. John Hendrickson and myself back here ready to thrill and excite you on the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment.
That's right.
Come on, that was the best yet.
Yes, yeah.
That was.
Yep.
All right, great. We are off and running because we've got a lot to cover today. A great show. John has been eager to get this one going for quite some time.
Yes, yeah.
We just kind of a roundup, I guess, today of things that are going on with the legislative session, hopefully wrapping up. We're going to talk a little bit about local governments. That's going to come as a shock to our listeners, and a little bit about tax and spending. But anyway, I want to start out because a little bit of politics. I mean, it's all political, I guess, John, but we had a special election recently here for another vacant House seat, which is now the fourth one this year already?
Yes, I believe so.
So anyway.
At least third, yeah.
Yeah. So this one was didn't get a lot of attention leading up to it because, frankly, it didn't. I don't think either side thought that it was going to be especially competitive. It's a Democrat seat, but this one was in Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, where it was Representative Sammy Sheets had been appointed to a vacancy on the. Is it the Lynn County Board of Supervisors, I believe?
Yes, yeah.
But anyway,
that's correct.
I'm the one that told you to read up on this, so you were supposed to come in here and give me all the details,
Yeah.
John. But anyway, so again, underlying that is that the job that they really all want is county supervisor.
Yes,
because that's where the money's at.
Yep,
So don't be shocked when you once again hear of a legislator wanting to go be a county supervisor. Anyway, but. So the winner, so this was a seat that was won by Kamala Harris by 33 points last fall. So a Democrat seat. And the Democrat candidate, Angel Ramirez, won over the Republican Bernie Hayes by 79-21. Big win. Okay, let's just get that up front.
Yeah.
But again, you're seeing Democrats really trying to spike the football on this one to... look at the as an indicator of momentum. And look, a win is a win, certainly bigger than the presidential margin. It's hard to know from here at ITR World Headquarters what was going on the ground here on this one.
Yeah.
But I guess I always caution everyone to read too much into special elections, especially when they're in seats that aren't as competitive. So I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, John, but Democrats are really good at special elections. They just are. In general, they have an advantage.
Yeah. For
whatever reason, I think the way that their coalition is built up, they've got some built-in ground game advantages, whether it be through organized labor or other parts of their coalition that they can, because special elections, especially down ballot, the legislative level and further down, are all about turnout. There is nothing in there about voter persuasion. There's a handful of people that are middle of the road, but I suspect in this race, there were very few people that were really sitting back and wondering whether they wanted to vote Republican or Democrat. Mm-hmm. This is the committed voter that knows where they're at, and so really it's an exercise on who can you get to turn out to vote. And having been a part of running, several as myself, it is 100% voter enthusiasm, voter turnout. So why do I say all this, John? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, yeah.
You're supposed to jump in. It's like, what's the point, Chris?
Yeah, what's the point, Chris?
Just be careful. I saw Otter Rob Sand jumping in, trying to talk about how huge this was and an indicator of momentum. And frankly, maybe he should as a political matter. But just be wary, especially in a deep blue district, that this really means anything other than they got their people out to vote.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right on that. They're going to play this up as being a substantial victory, and it's really not. I mean, it's not an upset.
No, it's the outcome certainly isn't an upset, and I understand that Hayes was actually a pretty good candidate, but at some point the hill is just too steep. But
and I'm making an assumption because I only read the article here, and so I don't I just can make some assumptions on the platform that Ramirez ran on, and I highly doubt a majority of Iowans would support that platform.
Well, I haven't even gone that deep into it, but I think a majority of Iowans don't even support the Democrat platform writ large.
Yes, yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
And I think that's indicative of where the majorities lie in the legislature. There was a quote in here, because this is kind of what I'm trying to get at. Here's from Democrat State Party Chairman Rita Hart. The scale of our victory tonight, so again, she's talking about the margin of victory, shows that as long as Democrats run candidates who understand and fight for their communities, we can win elections across the state. Look, I do not know what the folks in that particular district are looking for. Whatever. There's more work to be done. Tonight, we can rest assured that things are looking a little brighter. Okay. I mean, they held a Democrat seat. If that makes things a little brighter for them, then so be it. But I guess I would just, again, this is not a data point for the 2026 election.
No.
Frankly, I'm not sure that any of the specials we've had this year have been, because, again, I don't know what that delta is for Democrats and specials, but it is significant.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Look, and maybe that is indicative of something itself, that the core, the base of the Democrat Party is very motivated to vote in an election no matter what. I'd entertain that debate. But I remain confident that conservative voters will show up in the 2026 election. They just will. Because they always do. Sometimes it takes them a little while to come around because they want to be convinced. They expect a lot out of their leaders. They expect a lot. You have to earn the vote. You don't just get it because you're on Team Red.
That's right.
But yes, they'll be there in the end. So that's kind of what I want to say about that, because it happened and we need to pay attention to it. I saw another article before we kind of get into the spending and fiscal policy conversation that we always like to have here. There was another article I found, John, and I am now struggling to find the link for it, but it was the University of Iowa Faculty Senate. Did you see this?
Yes, yep.
Had signed on to a letter, whatever they called it. You've got the article printed out right there about shared values and joining, and this is sort of in response to the Trump administration coming down on them on their liberal policies. Tell me a little bit about what you read in that article.
Well, this comes down to the recent headlines that I'm sure our listeners have heard about. Trump sort of going after Harvard and other institutions of higher learning about not only just their diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI programs, but also this one specifically dealing with what the administration is saying. We've had enough of basically the anti-Semitism on campuses, and so I have not read the full shared values document that came out of Rutgers. That's where it originated.
You and I can probably imagine what it says.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so let's just assume those things.
But they're basically saying that, let me just quote from this article here. The administration has threatened to pull federal funding from schools it believes did not do enough to protect Jewish students on campus during demonstrations protesting the war on Gaza. And so the pushback here from this shared value statement is the Big Ten universities, which University of Iowa signed on to, is that they claim, and I quote, we support the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees the right to engage in peaceful assembly, regardless of viewpoint or citizenship status, should have the opportunity to do so without retaliation. And but what's, from my point of view, what's happening here is it's not necessarily peaceful free speech going on some of these campuses, especially going with the protests against Jewish students.
Well, let me jump in here, John, because I think it's rich that they want to quote the First Amendment.
Yeah.
It was the University of Iowa that in 2018 lost in federal court, lost in front of the Eighth Circuit because they tried to run a Christian organization off campus.
Yes, yeah.
In a case where an Obama appointee called it blatantly unconstitutional. because they tried to take out an InterVarsity Christian Fellowship chapter and say you couldn't bring your preferred leader on there, and you had a statement of belief. It's absurd. To the audacity of these people to try and use some stretch of what the First Amendment says when you're guilty on the back end of the blatant violations. Okay, I had to get that in.
Well, and there's obviously, I mean, for this has been going on for decades. I mean, just a sheer left-wing bias at these institutions of higher education. So just imagine the outrage that faculty and students would have at the University of Iowa. Someone like Tucker Carlson would show up, or another conservative, to give a speech. There'd be massive protests, and that there's definitely a bias. I would call it a taxpayer subsidized left wing bias,
John,
at these institutions.
I agree, but I think it's worse than bias. Look, they are taking this idea of viewpoint diversity, and it's anything but. It is cultural Marxism.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
They are trying to dress this up as we should be free to say and do what we want, when really it's about making sure that our viewpoint is the only one that's put forth, especially in our college campuses.
Absolutely.
And where it's especially toxic is when it's used in an institution where you're actually generating the next generation of thinkers in our society. That's where it's even so much more ridiculous. And then the gaslighting involved to say that, well, it's First Amendment, we're protected. Well, you couldn't care less about the protections that go the other direction.
That's right.
If we have the opportunity to run Christians off campus, we're absolutely going to do that. Conservatives, no way.
Yeah.
But if you want to go ahead and be anti-Semitic and protest, supporting, terror acts in Gaza, well, hey, all in there. There's viewpoint diversity. So I think it's much more corrosive than bias.
I think they forgot that the Constitution applies to everybody, and they not just to their worldview.
Right.
And so you're absolutely right. The other thing that
I want to jump in too with another thought. And let's be clear, this is the faculty senate, and I think we all know the viewpoint of your average college professor.
Yes,
right. This is the and usually even the faculty senate is even further left than probably the average college professor. This is their leaders. Because I do think that the Regents universities, I think, have made real progress in stepping back from the ledge.
Yeah.
I think the Board of Regents that we have in place has done a great job. Look, these are huge institutions with a lot of inertia and momentum going, that it takes real work to pull back. And I think the regents and our presidents, I think the legislature and the governor have done a really good job over the last several years. And I wanted to make sure I said that we are talking about the faculty senate here, which is different.
But from a larger perspective, this is something that the Trump administration has really, I think, been doing a good job on, because from whether it's going after the DEI programs or just recently, they and I believe Vice President Vance has been put in charge of this, but to restructure the Smithsonian and get rid of the liberal bias that's within the Smithsonian, and sort of this woke view of American history. And so, there is especially as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the Trump administration has put on a huge emphasis on sort of writing the course of our history, and sort of of ending this left wing bias that we're our history should be something we should be ashamed of, and
I'm sorry, John. Where are we at on the bill on the Department of, or whatever, University of Iowa, the Department of Academic Freedom?
I believe that passed.
I think it's passed,
and it's waiting to see whether the governor will sign it or not.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, John, because that's where I thought it was. But I know you've tracked it a little more closely than I have. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Right here, I want you to announce. I'm announcing for you your candidacy for dean of that new
Yes,
department at
yeah,
the University
yeah.
of Iowa. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I'm officially announcing for that.
Okay. We
Yeah.
here at the ITR Live podcast, and me specifically, in the scant amount of political capital that I have or ever had here in Iowa, I genuinely believe that ITR Live podcast own John Hendrickson should be the dean of that department. You're already the chair of the Center for the Preservation of Western
That's
Civilization.
right, yeah.
It would
Yeah.
be a very easy progression
Yes.
in
yeah.
your career.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, we're not just. I mean, you you really would be very good at it, though, John.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. Okay. I have a good track record of constitutional programs and
takes yeah.
Civic education. So
Yeah. No. So
yeah.
Okay, for those folks out there that are putting this together that have worked on it, give us a call. Give John a call, and if nothing else, he'll have some thoughts on how to make that a success. So anyway, good stuff. Okay, John, I want to shift gears now to what's going on both in the Capitol and around the state. And I have a point that I'm going to try to land at as we work through this, but putting together the state, finishing touches on the state budget right now, I think we talked a little bit about this, and the idea of budget targets. House and the Senate aren't really all that far apart on how much they want to spend in next year's budget. I suspect they get that resolved. And just a few spending items in there. And frankly, there are probably some good, worthwhile spending items. It's just that final process of wants versus needs. But we looked at this yesterday over the last couple of years. We've been talking about this. The total amount of the state budget is going to be somewhere north of $9.4 billion this year. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
And how much on a percentage basis of the year before are we talking about? How much is it growth year over year?
About 3%.
Year over year?
You mean on average or?
No, I'm talking about just fiscal. We're going into fiscal year 26. Year over year.
Yes, yeah. So this would be not quite 5.5%.
That's about what I thought.
Yeah.
Because it's different because you had the governor's proposed budget and this set of budget targets. So but I think we'll land somewhere in the in the mid 5% in growth. That's above the historical average. It's certainly above the average that we've seen out of this legislature over the last, we'll call it 8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And as we've talked about, obviously more spending is more spending, but a big chunk of this spending this year is because of a Medicaid obligation that's handed down from the federal government that they have no control over. They have to fund, and the last big chunk of implementing ESAs to cover the existing families or the existing students going into the system, and then that drops off for the most part going into next year. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. So what's the point there? Well, sometimes you have to spend what you have to spend just to keep the lights on and to enact the conservative reforms. But it's a cautionary tale that we cannot grow the state budget 5% a year.
That's right.
We can't even, even half of that is probably pushing it. So we're going to keep watching that this year, next year. I'm not even saying that what they're doing this year is inappropriate, but we've really got to watch the spending.
Yeah.
And there's two sides to that equation, John. There's the actual amount that the budget is, but there's also the carve outs and the erosion of the tax base on the other side.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it's all part of the same thing. So we need to watch it. Because we're still trying to phase in the tax reforms that we made. Mm-hmm. And yes, we've got a huge amount of what we talked about this too, John. The taxpayer relief fund and the ending fund balance. I mean, I want to say around $6 billion.
Yes,
that we've got sitting there, right?
Yep. Almost approaching 7. Yep.
But that's not going to last forever.
No.
And if you're at 5% a year, it's not even going to last more than a few years.
That's right.
So, and we're going to be working on that more through the summer and fall about what. You've talked about it with you and our friend Vance Ginn have talked about of the responsible Iowa budget and really where should we peg that at going forward to make sure this all works. But we're going to be working on. Go ahead.
You cannot have good tax policy without controlling spending, without limiting spending, and so and we've said this thousands of times.
Right.
That regardless the income tax, the property taxes, sales taxes, government spending drives taxation.
Yeah.
And so that's policymakers have to understand that.
And because we're equal opportunity in pointing out spending, we're still in budget season at the local
yes,
level.
Yep.
And a reminder that spending, look, we got a lot of folks out there upset about property taxes. It is the spending. We just cannot mention that. It is, if you find yourself talking about rollback or assessments or any other formula, stop. It's about the spending. And there's no amount of adjusting the dials on the spending on the taxation formula that's going to change that equation. I saw this. I saw a link to an article about Coralville's budget they just passed, and the headline was a mess, but it's what caught my attention. Here's the headline from Channel 2 in Cedar Rapids. Coralville okays budget with slight tax levy cut. I guess that's a little bit better. And utility fee hikes. And so I thought, well, okay, I would think a growing community like Coralville could cut their levy more, but this is an example of how you get caught up in the numbers and the analysis of it so quickly. The city's property tax levy will drop slightly to 14.52 blah, 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 per $1,000 taxable value, down from 14.55016. Again, we're already lost in a sea of numbers.
Yep.
Homeowners could see their city property tax bill go up due to an increase in the state's residential rollback rate. Okay, we do this stuff for a living, and I've got to read that 2 or 3 times to figure out what point they're trying to make. That change, here's a little bit more useful number. That change could mean about $15 annually per 100,000 of assessed home value. Again, I got to get out a calculator to figure that out. Okay, fine. Again, going on, they're raising the franchise fee from 1% to 2%, so doubling that on your gas and electric bill. And they're going to raise water fees, going up. There was another one. Oh, yard waste fees are going up too. And so I decided to dig into this a little bit and what's really going on here? And at the end of the day, their overall budget year over year was going up 3%. Okay. But how much did I have to sift through to figure that out?
Yes, yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard.
No.
And like, I don't even know if 3% is the right number. Coralville's a growing community.
Yes, yeah.
And there's a lot going on there. Maybe there's something in there. I don't know. But at a minimum, it looks like significant property tax reform this year is once again going to be elusive. At a minimum, we need to find a way to communicate these ideas to Iowans in a way they can understand.
Yeah.
And I think one of them comes through fixing the notification forms, John.
Yes,
Got to get that done.
Yeah.
And just print on a piece of paper how much my taxes are going up. Not $15 per 100,000 of assessed value. I don't want that number.
Yeah. And that should be something that should be non-controversial, nonpartisan. We have repeatedly showed examples of the Minnesota. If Minnesota can do it, we can do it.
Yeah.
That has a clear, easy to understand, transparent notice. And other states have done this, so there's no reason why Iowa can't do this. I mean, if anything, they should at least pass that reform.
Right. And I get that there's going to require some programming, some additional work into how they print that. Fine, do it. But now we've got 10 or 11 months until they got to go out again. We got a lot of time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart people that work in state and local government. We can figure this out.
Yeah.
So just do it. So I remain hopeful that we can get that piece done. And I'm going to put a plug in, John, because there is a place where you can get some basic data and some basic information, which is at ITR Local.
Yes.
So if you're still interested in this, so I've got Coralville pulled up right here. And for the past several years, property tax revenue collections have outpaced inflation plus population by a fair amount. Coralville's got a lot of nice things going on, but they also are spending quite a bit of money. And where's the money coming from? Well, I can look here that compared to comparable cities around the state, Coralville's got a pretty high tax levy rate. They may have declined it a little bit, but did you know that your city levy rate is higher in Coralville than it is in Mason City? I mean, or it's comparable to maybe Clinton. Whereas even in their general vicinity, North Liberty's is almost 3 cents cheaper per thousand, significantly cheaper in North Liberty. I'd be curious what's going on between those two. If you want to know what's driving that high levy rate, it's right here at ITR Local. Go in here and look at the debt service levy. So the statewide average is $1.22 per thousand, but you're paying not quite double that in Coralville, $2.12. That's interesting. Why is the employee benefits levy double in Coralville what it is over the statewide average? These are questions that if I live in Coralville and I'm upset about my property taxes, I'd want to ask the local leaders. And again, like I said, it's a 3% growth. Maybe that's the right number, but you can go in here and look and see what's driving that.
Yes,
or maybe the other way to think is what's the obstacle to not just cutting it 10 cents or whatever on the levy? What's the obstacle locally to providing me with real significant property tax relief? So anyway, I wanted to make that shameless plug for ITR Local.
No, that's absolutely right, and I'm glad you reminded people about the spending, because the last several news stories I've seen and people talking about property tax, they're starting to blame the assessor again, and the assessment process, and that's just not. It just sets us back.
It does.
And I also think, and people could disagree with me on this, but I would argue that the complexity of the property tax issue is something that's to an advantage of opponents to reform, because they can put it into the weeds.
Heck yes.
And then they can then the debate goes off in 1,000 different directions, and then you don't talk about what's at heart, and that's spending. And then nothing gets done, because then people start getting scared because local officials say, well, you're going to get rid of my ambulance service, my fire service, my police service, and we're going to cut this and all this. And that's just not true.
John, I've shared stories and thoughts from my time in the legislature from time to time about when you walk into the Capitol, there's all the folks with their hand out, and they want a piece of tax money and whatever. But, I was thinking about making it difficult to do something. The real art is actually these folks in the Capitol lobbies is killing bills and killing them. And the easiest, I think it's probably the number one tool of those that try to stop legislation, to try to block a bill from moving forward, is to overcomplicate it. And so that's page one of the playbook. Let's make this so complicated that nobody feels comfortable moving forward. And frankly, to be fair, is the biggest obstacle to passing a property tax reform bill, is because it has to be complicated to fix a complicated system. You almost have to the fix has to be complicated. Although I think the overall solution is just spending limits, and we can do that. But so to your point about all that, yes, let's just confuse this to the point that no one wants to move forward.
Yeah. No,
and I would also say that it's not always done with, what's the diplomatic way? Sometimes we present a version of reality that fits with the confusion in a way that may not be the most accurate way to describe a bill. That's the most diplomatic way I can think to say that right now. So anyway, I guess I will leave it with just a reminder that spending limits may not be the most politically exciting thing for a leader to talk about. But we are in a spot where it is the solution to the issues that matter to Iowans. At the state level, it is spending limitations. It's stop eroding the tax base so that we can secure the tax reforms that we have done before. It is so that we can continue to show the country how Iowa works.
Yes.
And at the local level, we know without a doubt that people are mad on a bipartisan level. They're mad about their property taxes. And the number one way that we can effectively deliver relief is to limit spending. So state or local, we have to keep our foot on the brakes. and remember to separate wants versus needs and honor the ability of the taxpayer to foot the bill.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Good. All right. I told you we had a lot to go over. You got anything else? This is the most dangerous question I ask in any podcast episode. Is John, you got anything else today?
I do have one more thing.
Okay, great.
I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. And I thought former Senator Brad Zahn had one of the best property tax bills, which was just a simple spending limitation.
Yep.
And it would work.
Yep. No, it would.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that our solutions, that we can't have simple solutions, but the mechanisms are often complicated. But you're right. That bill would have worked.
Yeah.
And another thing too, and maybe we should save this, but it's on my mind. I wasn't, but other members of our team were going through some old documents, ITR documents from back in the day. Is they're just old stuff that you got sitting around in the basement. And it was some things, I think, back from the 1990s talking about property taxes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And it was limit spending.
Yeah.
It was all the same
awesome.
things we're talking about today and the same predictable responses. And think where we would be today if we had just limited spending a little bit back then. And we could, instead of racing forward to where we have some of the highest property taxes in the country and racing forward to where we're spending 1.5% of the value of our homes every year for the privilege of living in them.
Yeah.
There is a better way, and we've got to find it.
And just like the income tax, in fact, we to a certain extent, you didn't limit spending, you just slowed the growth of spending.
Right.
And so spending has still increased. And, we could also look at, if you want to, as all these politicians are saying here in Iowa, if you want to blow up the system, I would say look at Utah's. Yeah. That has proven to work. That is considered the gold standard of property tax reform laws, that taxpayers, taxpayer-friendly law in the nation for property tax is Utah's truth in taxation law.
You just have to be willing to be bold and go do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna close the teaser because you mentioned blowing up the system, John. We should have. In a future episode, because we don't have time today, we're just gonna have a blow up the system episode, and what would that work? Because I hear people talking about eliminating property taxes. That's a blow up the system idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? Because look, if somebody may wave their wand and give us that system, I'm in.
Yeah.
But I want to know what that means.
Absolutely.
Or what does blow up the system? And I'm not, maybe blow up's not the right word, but what does eliminating the individual income tax look like?
Yeah.
I don't know. What are these big sea change sorts of ideas, and what do they mean?
Yeah.
And some of them might be ones that we'd be willing to sign on to. I don't know, but maybe that'd be kind of fun.
I think so.
Let's just imagine that we're king for a day.
Yes. Yeah.
The king for a day episode. Let's have that one.
That's
okay.
right, yeah.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to stay tuned for that one because we are not prepped for that one. That did not come up in the pre-production meeting. So, all right. Well, John, thank you, listeners, for joining us. Appreciate your support of the podcast. Appreciate your support of Iowans for Tax Relief and for limited government across the state of Iowa. Don't forget to tell your friends about the show. And with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.